Welcome to Weird Games and Weirder People, a podcast about role-playing games and the weird, wonderful people behind them. Hello, wonderful weirdos. This is Diogo Nogueira, and today's guest is the wonderful Matthew Morris, ManaDawn, the creator of Roleplaying, Burn Pulp Zine, and a lot of Mausritter content, and a recent Kickstarter, a mega dungeon collaboratively created by the community called Tomb of a Thousand Doors. But before we get into that chat, I'd like to make a few announcements. I will be on Game On Expo from March 15th to March 17th, and also be on GaryCon from March 23rd, 25th, and also remind you, if you like the show, please subscribe to the podcast wherever you listen to your podcast. Leave us a review, telling what you think about the show, share with your friends, family, etc. And look at the show notes to see how you can support the show, paying us a coffee at Ko-Fi, and help keep the show going. And getting back to Matthew Morris, we talked a lot about A Tomb of a Thousand Doors, how it was created in a collaborative way with other creators such as Salvaterra, Tony Vazinda, and many others. Really a great team. We talk about the relationship Matthew has with coffee and how that has been changing over the years. We talk about how he's really a man of deep faith and how that affects his work, his daily life, and the people around him. We talked about inspirations, the Headwall book series, many authors, many works of art that inspired his journey through the life of RPG, how he began making his games, and now how he makes all this other stuff he supports. He talked about his fascination with ancient history, mythology, and folklore, and many other very interesting topics. So I hope you listen to it and enjoy it as much as we did. So let's get weird with Matthew Morris. Hello, Matthew. Welcome to Weird Games and Weirder People. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing well, Diogo. It's an honor to be on the show. I'm very excited about today.
It's an honor to have you here, and I've been following your work for a while. You have done so much, and you've inspired me a lot. So it's great to have Matthew Morris here, ManaDawn, and just talk about the great thing that you do. But before we get to it, maybe the wonderful weirdos out there don't know who you are. So I'm asking, Math, who is Matthew Morris? What is that you do? And please share us just a small weird detail about yourself, maybe weird habits that you do, maybe the way you pick clothes or do your coffee in the morning.
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Matthew Morris. I am a tabletop role-playing games creator, supplement writer, adventure writer. That's my hobby. In the real world, I am a pastor of a small local church. And something really weird about me. About several months ago, I changed up my coffee routine. I used to drink 6 shots of espresso every morning, and then would
Wow.
do that again at like noon. And I realized for almost 2 years, my only hydration was coming from coffee, not water, which was very
Wow.
problematic. So I switched to
Yeah.
1 cup of coffee. I do the whole scale, pour over just 1 cup, measure everything out, got super meticulous about it. And then I drink 2 64-ounce things of water minimum a day. So it was weird.
Yeah.
I always thought people who measured coffee were kind of weird, but now I'm one of them, and I love it. My coffee tastes way better this way.
Oh, and how does it affect your daily life? Like how you can do things, stay up late doing your work. How does it affect your functionality? I would say reducing coffee that
Yeah.
much. Do you think it's better? Do you miss the caffeine?
So for me, I mean, ever since the time I was like a little kid, I really never felt like caffeine gave me energy. Like I'd be the middle schooler who could drink a 32-ounce Mountain Dew and then fall asleep. Which is super not healthy. And that's I haven't drank pop in like close to 10 years. But I drink coffee for the flavor, and I thought espresso tastes super good. So I was just drinking 6 shots just so I could have that flavor. Um, but what I was realizing now that I've switched it up, I have so much more energy since I'm drinking water as opposed to just like a diuretic, like just straight coffee all the time. I'm
Yeah.
actually thinking much clearer. The coffee that I do drink, I enjoy it. I sip it slowly. It's a little bit thicker because of the way I do it,
Yeah.
and it's much more enjoyable. And so I feel like I get more out of my day because I think subconsciously the caffeine was working and I was crashing. I just didn't know it because I had been so conditioned to it.
Yeah.
And so now that that's gone, I just have like a continuous flow of energy all day.
Yeah. And what you said too, like, is it the same coffee or is it like a different coffee? Because you mentioned it tasting better, and maybe when we reduce and like just tasting a small bits, we can appreciate it more in a way, right? Instead of having it available all the time, it's just another cup, right?
Yeah, so it is definitely a different cup of coffee. I was terrible, and I was spending way too much money at like Starbucks and some of the other local coffee
Oh
shops.
yeah.
And I have a buddy who has a roasting company. He sources beans, does all the roasting, and he's got a small little coffee shop about 2 hours from me. But he just gives me bags of coffee for free, and I've just been like storing up on them and never using them. So now I'm using that. It's like artisan coffee, got all these flavors. It's amazing, and I'm also saving way too much money. I didn't
Oh
realize
yeah.
how much I was spending on,
Oh yeah.
and I cut eating out as well.
A lot of money goes into coffee. Yeah.
It's really it was actually
Yeah.
kind of embarrassing when I've got a little app that like tracks my finances, and it was like you saved 50% this month, and I was like the only thing that changed was coffee and eating out, and I
Yeah.
was like I could have been saving a lot more money.
Yeah, I do spend a lot on coffee and eating out, but we buy Nespresso kind of things
Oh yeah, yeah,
here,
yeah.
and each one of them costs something. And I'm trying to switch to making coffee too and reduce. I don't drink as much as you, like 6 cups. I drink like 1 cup in the morning
Yeah,
and 1 cup, and I do latte. I mix with milk, but I drink one in the morning and one about 5, just to
nice.
yeah hold me up just a couple of hours after my kid and my wife go to bed, so I can write. I
Yeah,
can do some of my RPG job, my like second job. I don't know.
for sure, for sure.
Yeah, yeah. And Matthew, you mentioned being a pastor of a small local church, and usually
Yeah,
talk about spirituality and religion
yeah,
in the end of the show. But since you mentioned this, uh, could you tell us a little bit about this, about your spirituality, about your religion,
yeah.
and about the church you're a pastor of? What is that you do, and how that affects your also your work as a creator?
Yeah, for sure. I'm a man of deep faith. I believe like wholeheartedly that there is a God. I'm from the line of thought that God
Like
exists in
the
three
Christian
person.
God, like
Yeah,
the
yeah, yeah.
good one that does good things and watch over us, or like this energy, or how
Yeah.
how is God for you?
Yeah, so
Yeah.
I would say I believe in the traditional Christian view of God exists in three persons: the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit. Jesus Christ being God incarnate on earth, living a life that's an example for us to follow, dying for all the bad things that I've done, so that I could have right relationship with the Father, and then rising again. So traditional Christian view of religion and faith. And I think that spills over into just about everything I do. I live by do unto others as you would have them do unto you. I really want to share love and hope, and hopefully bring peace to chaos, and be a I think Jesus said it in the New Testament, to be a beacon of light on a hill in the darkness. And so, however that manifests itself in any given situation, my goal and I feel my purpose is to be a positive influence and to point people um, to a better way of living, or at least a different way of living that overcomes hardships that we may face in our everyday life. And for me, I tell folks all the time, because that in and of itself can come across weird, especially in the 21st century and modern science and
Yeah.
archaeology, all those kind of things. So I'll tell people, like, often, like, if I'm gonna pray with someone, I believe in prayer. I believe prayer works. I'll tell someone that, um, hey, I'm that weird guy that actually believes there's a God who hears me when I pray. So humor me, and let's just pray, and let's see if something happens. And so I love to disarm even um, the preconceived notion, oh, well, he's just a weird Christian. I'll tell people I am weird. I believe it works, and I know that's weird. And guess what? It has affected my life. It's changed my life, and so maybe it can do the same for you. And so yeah,
Yeah, for sure. And I think it can be, even though like I'm atheist, and I think it can be real for you. Like when you pray, you get into that state, and then things align with that. So
for sure,
it can work for sure.
for sure.
And how you mentioned about being good to others and doing right,
Yeah.
uh, but does it help you in the tough times for yourself too? Like when
Hmm.
you're I don't know, feeling anxious or
Hmm.
anger or dissatisfied with something in your work, in your personal life, and how your religion and spirituality help you deal with that.
Yeah, for sure. Well, you mentioned anger, and I can be prone
I
to that.
mean, just
Yeah,
for top of my head, like
for sure.
you probably are aware of your own,
Yeah,
issues with this.
yeah,
For me, it's mostly anxiety.
yeah,
But
yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, no, I get anxious, so much so that maybe coffee was playing into that, but no, I'll have anxiety.
yeah,
Anger can come to the surface. Imposter syndrome and like comparison. And so there's levels of
yeah,
like jealousy. Pride is a big thing for me. And so all those will manifest themselves just in my like psyche and in who I am as a person. And I'm comforted by my faith because Jesus, who I believe is God, who took on human flesh, he goes through all those things. He experiences anxiety so much to the point that he sweats blood, which is about as metal as it gets, and he overcomes that, and he learns ways through prayer and communion with the Father. He gets angry, which is at least encouraging to me, that it's not like anger isn't evil. Anger is just like an expression of emotion. And if we do it in the right way or with the right focus, and we don't allow it to make us destructive, where we're now pushing that off on other people and hurting other people, it can be an outlet for us to just like express our emotion, but then recenter ourselves. And so I think about all the things, both negative and positive, that I can go through in life, and I can look to the scriptures, and there is a roadmap for me to follow
oh yeah,
to find a holistic health and all of that.
yeah, for sure. Through a little bit of study that I do with stoicism, and something that helps me with anxiety, all these
Mhm.
teachings, all this kind of philosophy. And he always mentions there's a lot of similarity with Christianity, because it was a religion that grew on that time in Rome and
Yeah,
etc. And there's a lot of good stuff to learn too. But one thing that worries me about religion in general
sure.
is all the negatives. I grew up Catholic, and
Hmm.
I don't know if you're Catholic or
No, no,
another different faith,
yeah,
uh, but there is, in some religion, there is a lot about shame, about
yeah.
us versus the others, and I think there's a lot to do with ego. Like we
Hmm.
are the chosen ones, we are
For sure.
best, and everybody else is the worst.
Yeah,
And how is that with your faith, with your church, and with your spirituality? How do you deal
yeah,
with these conflicting parts
yeah.
of the same coin in a way?
Yeah, for sure. And I definitely think that some of the greatest atrocities and evils of human history were perpetrated by religion, or at least in the name of religion.
Yeah.
And I think you said it well. It comes down to ego. It comes down to pride. And we can put on like this false cloak of I'm religious, I'm pious, I'm doing this because of my God, I'm doing this because of my faith. But in all reality, you're doing it because you want power, you want like authority, you want influence, and throughout history, people have cloaked it. And I think true faith and true religion at its core is selfless. How can I elevate others? If I seek to be exalted, um, I'll either be humbled
Yeah.
or I will exalt myself so much that I have destroyed the legacy of my reputation. It may seem as though, like the Crusaders, they
Yeah.
pretended as though it was we're doing this to reclaim for God, but in really it was there's an opportunity to steal land from people who are weaker than
Oh
us.
yeah.
We're going to go steal land, and that still happens today. And I think it's a travesty, because there's a lot of things that God has been blamed for that weren't like his heart and his
Yeah.
mission.
It
His
was
his heart
us.
is compassion. Yeah, it was us. We get in the way,
It
and
is us. Yeah.
yeah, and I think more often than not, um, that is the ongoing temptation, even for me. Like a, a nobody in a small suburb of Portland, I still wrestle and struggle with pride, and it can get me to the place where I'm trying to elevate by putting others down.
Oh
And
yeah.
every time I do that, it affects me negatively, whether I know it or not. It's chipping away at my character. It's chipping away at the core of who I am, and so I have to surrender that understanding of things and just be like, okay, no, it's a weird formula. It's different than the systems that this world has in place. But if I put myself at the bottom and lift others up, as a result, when I lift them up, I somehow get elevated. And it doesn't work mathematically. It doesn't work like even psychologically, but it does. And it's a principle that I think is good. And so that's why one of the reasons I love the tabletop role playing like community that's been fostered in the indie scene is there's a lot of, hey, I want to elevate other people, and it's that rising tide lifts all boats,
Yeah.
and I think that's super helpful.
Yeah. And I confess that every time I see, you know, because it's something that we learn through experience, through the medium we are in the world we're in, and every time I see, an indie author trying to, market their game and say, oh, it's the best game of whatever,
Yeah,
and I feel
yeah.
like, really, you do really think it's like the best, you
Oh
know
yeah, yeah,
I don't know. I mean, I know it's just marketing, but it's always itch me like in the wrong way. Like when people try to sell them as being the best and the
sure.
most of something, like
Yeah,
the ego. I don't know.
yeah, for sure. Well, I can
It's
tell you one
weird.
thing. I can tell you one thing. You did create the best Stone Age role playing game, and I don't know if there was many other to compare it to, but yours is
There are
definitely the
many
best.
great ones. I it's the best for me the way I want to play.
Yeah.
But I can't say it. I know. I don't know. It feels weird saying that.
Yeah,
Like
for sure, for sure.
who am who the fuck am I to say that, right? I don't know.
Yeah, well, just let other people tell you and affirm you, and I think
Yeah, and I can say thank and don't believe them. So and
yeah,
keep
sure, sure, sure.
try to doing better. But yeah, Matthew, the theme of the show is the weird in kind of in a positive way. We always say trying to put a new spin on this word, and
Yeah.
the weird is the new wonderful. So I'd like to ask you, if you can, to try to define what is weird for you, and if you are into the weird, and how do you seek that, either both in your life and your work as well.
Yeah, for sure. So I grew up in um in a I don't know if time is the right the right phrase, but in a culture, maybe growing up in a more conservative evangelical sphere of things, that anything fantasy, anything science fiction, anything that was uh, big imagination, you don't want to touch that with a 10-foot pole. And so you avoid that. And so to me, I was always drawn to like science fantasy, science
The
fiction,
forbidden,
high
right?
fantasy.
Yeah.
Yeah, for like it was so much so this I think about it now, like being 20 years removed for it, but like the Lord of the Rings was seen as bad. Now looking at it, I'm like, gosh, Tolkien was one of the
Yeah.
strongest men of faith, and like he wouldn't say that the Lord of the Rings is allegorical. He actually came very strongly against that stance. But the concepts that he weaves throughout all
Yeah.
of the Middle Earth Legendarium,
Even if he didn't want to make it allegorical,
it
it's
was Christian at its core, and so it was
yeah.
so funny being in the culture that said that was bad.
Oh
And
yeah.
so for me, I always gravitated to it. I love drawing maps from the time I was young. I've been drawing maps, detailing maps, um, and I fixate. There's
You know what
probably
I love
go
it
for
to
it.
do. I would love to look at maybe a wall that has
Mhm.
water on it and has these stains, and I look at a stain. Oh, that's a great continent, and I would
Oh yeah,
take a piece of paper and just draw that thing that was just seeing make a continent. I love drawing maps too, and
oh yeah.
that
No, I
reminds me. Neil Gaiman said he started making fiction because he started drawing maps.
yeah. Yeah, no, we had bunk beds when I was a kid, and I was on the top, so I'm really close to the ceiling, and like the texture of even like the plaster on the roof, like they would orient themselves. I'm like, oh, that's the perfect archipelago, and like so, like from a super young age, I was very fascinated with like the South Pacific and Southeast Asia and all the way the islands go, and so like I got very prevalent, like proficient at drawing to scale maps of the South Pacific, and I would label every nation and like put the capitals and all that kind of stuff. And then I would like do dotted lines for shipping routes. And like in third grade, my teacher was from Australia, and I just was drawing this one day, and she's like, "I grew up there. I don't even know all those things." It was just so I always gravitated
Yeah.
towards that side of things. Um, and then I got introduced to the Redwall book series by Brian Jacques, which is this. It's like high fantasy, but it's mice and bunnies and rats and badgers. Um, Beautiful series that really was my like doorway into fantasy. Then I read a lot of C.S. Lewis, The Chronicles of Narnia, and so I was like, there are safe, I'll put safe in square in scare quotes, because in some of the culture that
Hmm.
I was in, those were probably like, don't touch it, but CS Lewis is like a Christian hero, and so like you it those are okay. And so I kind of like took the dive into fantasy via C.S. Lewis and Brian Jacques, and then that led me to Tolkien. As I kind of emerged out of that community in my high school years, we left the church that we had been at to start a new church, and I got exposed to the wider world of fantasy. I guess would be how I'd say it. And so um, all the while, I was a band kid in high school. I played trombone. Then I got braces and I gave up trombone, started playing bass guitar. I still play bass guitar. Um, so I love fantasy. I love drawing maps. I'm a band kid, but I'm also a 4 year varsity letter football player, like
Wow.
one of the jocks. Um, Yet I'm in this. So I was crossing over all these different things. So as a football player, they thought I was weird. I got not bullied because I was one of the biggest kids around. I wasn't getting physically bullied, but there was like a psychological like, dude, you're just weird. Why aren't you going to parties with us? Well, because I want to go watch Lord of the Rings with my friends. I was a part of the Risk. If you're familiar with the board game Risk, I helped start the Risk Club at our school. Um, and that was like not what the football players would do.
Oh yeah.
But I did it, and at like at lunches, I wasn't going and sitting with the athletes and the popular kids. Like it was my goal to find the kid who was sitting alone. and just go sit with them and befriend them. And so I got exposed to like Dungeons and Dragons and Magic the Gathering when I was in high school, but it was still a little too weird for me because I had some baggage from my younger years,
Oh
and
yeah.
I always thought it was like that's interesting, but are you
And
really
all your
casting?
football friends like, oh, you're playing D&D.
Sure,
That's a
yeah,
little
yeah.
bit too much, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and in those days, I know now, that would have been like in the 2nd edition and the early 3rd edition days, and so, like, yeah, there's a part of me that's like, I wish I could hop in a time machine, go back, and, like, join the hobby then as opposed to now, but I don't know what that would do to me, I
Oh
love what it
yeah.
is now, you know, and so,
No
um
regrets. Yeah.
yeah, for sure, but yeah, so I think my coming full circle back to the question, my like engagement with the weird, it was kind of a shedding of all of the negative
It was gradual.
stereotypes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so Redwall broke the ice, and I was able to shed the negative stereotypes, realize that hey, these are just awesome people, cool people who love imagination, something I've always had, always fostered, and now I have an outlet for it. And when you come to find out, it's not weird, it's cool. And then the paradigm shift, weird is cool. And so it's the
Yeah.
new wonderful, yeah.
And yeah, that ties to our next question, which would be if you think role playing games are intrinsically weird, and whether you do or not, what is your favorite, thing about role playing games?
Yeah, that's a wonderful question. So I love like strategy games. Um, I grew up playing Risk and like Stratego. Um, I love chess. I'm terrible at it. Um, I loved playing poker. And so I like these like intrinsically strategy based games that are also cooperative. Um, so I had that sphere, and then I love Tolkien. I read the Silmarillion once a year. Like most people who like Tolkien have never even touched it, but I'm going on 8 years strong reading the Silmarillion every single year. Like I love that. So then
Wow.
to be able to marry the two, um, strategy game plus fantasy lore, um, to me, that was what made Dungeons and Dragons, which was my first like foray into into the hobby. It made it so cool. Um, but then there's like bits and pieces. So I used to play video games when I was younger, and like my favorite video game of all time was Star Wars: Knights of the Old Republic. It's a solo video game. I only found out 15 years later that in essence it is just Dungeons and Dragons. It's the same
It's
6
Saga
stats.
Edition, right? Or yeah, it's one of
Yeah,
the D&D Star
yeah,
Wars editions. Yeah.
yeah, and it's great, and I loved it. And like I'd play Madden because I was a football player, so I'd play the football video game. But I wouldn't play games. I'd create characters and create teams, and I was so fascinated with like choosing the right colors for the uniforms and like. And so now I look back at it and I was like, I was meant to be someone who created lore, created my own world. I'm not a very good like creative writer. I can't just like sit down and like write block text, but I can bullet point things. Um, and so I definitely think I loved playing role playing games, but when I stepped into the seat of being a dungeon master or a game master, that's where I found my home. And I am perfectly content being the forever game master who never plays as a player again. Because like it's not that I want to tell a story because I'm not a fan of railroading or coming in with a pre sandbox exploration and sandbox worlds. I want to like create the framework and then my players tell the stories that exist within that world,
Yeah.
and I just get to help shape like, oh, okay, that does exist or it doesn't exist, or that was such a great idea I didn't think of, let's put it in our world. And so for me, that like the collaborative
Yeah.
world building and storytelling is like my favorite thing because it like it mirrors
Yeah,
us
and see
as
what happens. Yeah,
yeah.
you make a toy and you give it to the players. Like, oh, this is this place and this is happening. There is this person doing this person doing that, and there is this artifact. What's gonna happen? So
Yeah.
that's really fun part. And I feel very much like you. I always want to GM, but I'm always in that place. So maybe I should play more because I'm pretty sure I can learn from these people. But there was some great experience that I learned a lot, and there were some also terrible experience that I don't ever want to play with someone like this again. So every time it's like a new person running a game, like, will I enjoy this? Like this anxiety of, will I enjoy this and learn something, or will this be another terrible experience?
Yeah,
I don't
for
know.
sure, for sure.
Do you feel like that? Now I'm realized that maybe that's just my anxiety, but I had some really bad GMs and stories that my wife told me about the people she used to play with too. I was like, this is terrible.
Yeah.
I
So
I
I
should probably GM this just to be
yeah.
safe.
So I've been blessed because um, since I've been playing, I've only had like 3 or 4 different game masters other than myself, and one of which is my brother-in-law, who we were actually players. We both came to D&D at the exact same time. We were players in like a 1 year long campaign. It was great, and then he's been our game master for the last 7 years in an ongoing
Nice.
5th edition campaign. It's the only thing I hold on to for 5th edition is it's my family's ongoing game,
Yeah.
but I don't
The
touch 5th
things you
edition
do for
anywhere else.
family, right?
Yeah, exactly, exactly.
The
But
things
he's
you do for
great.
family.
Yeah, he's great. And then I've got to play in a lot of like one shots where the game master is awesome. And so in Portland, we've got a couple like amazing indie RPG creators here in Portland, like Brad Kerr lives here
Wow,
in
yeah.
Portland, and so Brad's GM'd a couple one shots we've played. I got to play with Ahimsa because he was in Portland for a little bit. Nick from Goblin Archives has run games, and Josh Demansky, who wrote the Mall alongside with Goblin Archives. We've run games together, and I've been a part of those, and so I feel kind of spoiled that I've learned from some of the great dungeon masters. At least that I know, and so yeah, I haven't had bad dungeon master experiences, but man, I've had bad player experiences. Um, we have
Do you have something to share? Something impactful to share with us? I
oh,
had some pretty bad ones too, but yeah, I've always
yeah,
it's a
s-
lesson. Like we can hear and like maybe think about what we could do to because when those episodes happen, I always paralyzed at the table and don't know what to do.
yeah.
And then like weeks later, oh, I should have done that.
For sure, for sure. Yeah, I we had the One Ring 2nd edition campaign that lasted 2 years. I was the lore
Great game.
master. Oh, great game! And I was the lore master, and we had 13 players.
Wow.
Yeah, that was a
A
lot to
fellowship, yeah,
manage.
the fellowship, yeah.
Exactly, exactly. And it wasn't so much the player was a bad player. It was
Would,
it
would
was
they
more.
all play together, or would you
Oh
have
yeah,
like
yeah.
did the
We
fellowship splits like in the movies or something?
No, nope. We had all 13 at the
Wow.
table, and it was. I think it was more the environment because, like, functionally, it would break into like 3 groups, even though the party was together. But this group was like defending, this group was like looting, and this group was just like mending wounds. And so like I had to like focus like, okay, I'm doing 20 minutes with you,
Yeah.
20 minutes with you. But I had some players who at that point they just pulled their cell phones out and checked out, and then they really cared about the lore and the narrative bit, but they had checked out. So then I had to like re-explain the last 20 minutes, and
Yeah.
so it would just like roadblock the game a little bit. But yeah, no, fun times. So maybe that's actually
Yeah.
bad
Yeah.
GMing on my part by having
No,
13
I
players.
mean, I think it's unfair today because we walk around with these devil devices on our pockets
Yep.
that we can simply disappear in it anywhere
Yeah.
we are,
Yeah.
and it's so easy. And it's actually one of the hard things I have of playing online is this.
Mm.
I know I try to stay in, but it's so easy to know. Oh, let me just check this on this other
Yeah.
window,
Yeah.
and when you're not paying attention anymore,
Yeah.
and with 13 players, like I would love to be able to get the attention of everybody, but 13 is too much. It's really
Yeah.
hard, and
Yeah.
it's really easy for people to get distracted. And I used to blame them. I used to be, hurt when players would do this kind of thing.
Right.
But I mean, it's an unfair fight. I mean,
Yeah.
I now realize I have a problem with this, with cell phones and stuff. So when I'm spending time with my wife or the kids, I try to just leave it somewhere else,
Yeah, that's
because
good.
I know any small interval that they give me, and maybe I posted a new episode on the show, maybe I posted a blog post, maybe I want to check out to see if any of my friends, my creative friends like you or everybody else said
Yeah,
something. It's terrible. And then
yeah,
in a game table, it's really hard. Like the person really wants to be committed to this, to not
sure.
be driven away, right? I don't know. I think it's much harder nowadays than it was when we, at least for me, when I began playing. We didn't have cell phones. Like,
Right.
it didn't have an option. We are here. We are here to play.
Yeah.
What you're gonna do? We, what we do to distract ourselves is to build towers with dice. Like, we each
Yeah,
have our own
exactly.
dice. We'd put one dice in above another one, and
Oh
that's
yeah,
was us distracting ourselves, I guess.
for
And
sure,
and
for sure.
and, and now knowing about neurodivergence too,
Yep,
I
yep,
can't blame someone for being distracted.
yeah. Oh, for
Maybe
sure.
that's just how they work. And
Yep,
yeah,
yep. I love it.
yeah. And Matthew, do you have any kind of creative ritual when you work on your art, on your text, on your books, when you do design? Do you have one for each, or do you have something for every time you go sit to work?
Yeah. So I definitely, um, I need. How do I put it right? So like in my everyday life, I'm not the most like fastidious and organized person.
Oh yeah.
Like I'll leave a pair of clothes next to the bed for 3 days before I pick it up. But when I sit down to
Yes.
like work, I have to like I'm so meticulous. Like I have to like I straighten
Oh yeah.
everything, make sure like all my papers are like completely
Oh
squared
wow.
off, and like I get so hyper fixated on like making sure the space is clean, and then I'll coil my cords on my computer perfectly, wrap them, and like I get super super fastidious about things.
Have
Um,
you read that book about organizing stuff? I forgot the name, but everybody tells about this, being organized, and I can't. But go
yeah,
ahead. Sorry.
no, no, no. I haven't read the book, but it's like it's just like this weird tick that I do, and then I love listening to like soundtracks, and so like YouTube has this channel called the Ambient Worlds, and they have like a Lord of the Rings soundtrack, and for whatever reason, just like the theme from Howard Shore, the Rohan theme. I'll just put that
Mm,
on in my headphones, and like it takes me to a different world, and then I can like get in the zone, and I can start writing. I jot down my notes really weird. I'm a terrible typer. I didn't take like computer or typing until I was like a junior in high school. So even still, like if I can get 60 words a minute, that's like I feel like an all star. I still type with only like two fingers each. And
it's
uh,
more than a lot of people, so yeah.
yeah, so for me, I can like write faster than I can type, and so I have stacks of paper with notes all over the place, just jotted all over. And so yeah, that's kind of a creative ritual that I do. I color code things, so if I'm like designing a setting, I'll use like a certain color pen. But then if I've got like an NPC or a creature, I'll grab a different color pen and jot that in.
Nice, nice.
I love
Mm.
to doodle, so like I'll draw little things. I've got like a shorthand system I use.
Have you ever posted those notes online for people to check out, or?
I
I
think
think
I've
it would be nice to see, the process, and see how you
yeah,
organize those things.
yeah, I think I've in the past, like when I was writing a couple Mausritter adventures, I like posted a picture of like this is my workflow, and it looks like someone just vomited on a piece of paper, and it's like there's no flow to it, but for whatever reason, my mind can trace it. But yeah, I think that is a good idea. I should post those more often. I'm
Yeah, I
actually
would
like
like to see them. Yeah.
so Jim Hall of Brooklyn Games is doing Beetle Night right now, and I'm writing the solo notes for it. And like this is like I just have this on my desk, and it's just like this like there's no even like organization to how it flows. Like some things are straight lines, some things are like angled up, and it's just
Yeah.
It's however my hand falls on the paper, but I can decipher it. Um, and so yeah, it I guess that is a weird ritual because if
Do you
people were to come back 100 years later, they wouldn't know what I was doing.
do you keep those somewhere? Like after you're finishing, like after you get all those notes and you put it on the paper, you type everything. Do you keep those notes everywhere? Do you have like a folder or any place you organize them afterwards, or they you put
Yeah,
out everything up in a box and
yeah, exactly. I don't have a folder and I don't have a box, but I have like an empty cupboard in my laundry room that I just like throw them in. So I've got like a stack of like mismatched stuff from even different like games where it's just like everything's on these random sheets of paper. I'm notorious for grabbing like old envelopes of junk mail and like using the back to write stuff on. And so I've got like envelopes stuck in there because for me, if I think about it and I don't write it down within 10 minutes the thought's
oh
gone,
yeah.
and so I just grab stuff, write stuff, and then and because I'm a
So
slow
you don't have
text.
a notebook. You don't
Yeah,
have a notebook. You just write on. If you find paper, you write it and you
exactly,
put it into your
exactly.
pocket. What happens if you're on the streets and you have an idea? What do you do?
uh it's funny. I'll stand still, and because I'm such a slow texter as well,
Uh-huh.
I use talk to text, and I open up a note and I just talk to my phone, and then I'll close it and continue doing what I'm doing. And sometimes
Okay,
like
yeah.
I go and I try and decipher because Siri doesn't know what I'm saying, and so she'll
Oh yeah.
jumble it up. And sometimes like I'm just like, nope, that thought's gone. Siri
why
mistranslated.
why don't you record yourself?
I don't know. That's a good idea because
What I do, what I
yeah.
do, I have, I created a group of my wife on WhatsApp, and then she left the group, so I have a group of myself. So it's called Message from the Past.
I love it. I love it.
A- and I either type it down or just send, text message. Oh, idea for Primal Quest, blah 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 blah, blah. And then I listen after because yeah, text to speech, it's terrible. It's something completely. Even when you're trying to write and the phone tries to autocorrect you and
Yeah,
it creates messes. If I speak with my accent too, it's gonna be
yeah,
terrible. So yeah,
yeah.
I just send messages to me. Yeah,
That's brilliant. And actually, I think I'm going to put that into practice even today. I never even thought about that, but I can do a voice memo.
yeah.
Yeah. See, I don't do it because I wasn't smart enough to think of it.
I stole it from someone. I
Hey,
think
hey,
I read it in one of its creative books and kind of steal like an artist or something like this.
yeah, yeah. Well,
It's
everything is stealing.
a hack. Yeah,
It's just constructive stealing.
yeah, yeah. Matthew, can you identify any particular place or time or region of culture where you see yourself constantly drawing ideas from? I say that because for me, obviously as artists, as game designers, we draw from everywhere, everyone,
Hmm.
right? We're always seeking inspirations. We learn a new thing. Like, oh, can I use that in some way? But I also see myself drawing a lot from the culture for when I was a kid, whether they are cartoons, movies,
Hmm.
comics, and whatever. Do you have something like this for you? Some region of culture or time in
Yeah.
culture where you draw a lot from?
Yeah. So for sure. So um, being a pastor, I didn't do the traditional route. Like I didn't go to seminary, I didn't go to Bible school. I always knew that's what I wanted to be, but got scared and went a completely different direction. Um, and so I actually went to university to become a history teacher. And so I actually got my degree in ancient Roman history. I wrote a 60-page thesis on the ancient Roman culture in the first 2 centuries. Um, and so I used to jokingly say if it's post 800 AD, it's not history, it's modern. And so like for me the ancient world is just like I love it. And as I mean that was 15 years ago I got that degree. And so as I've progressed, I've actually just like gone further back. And so like for me like the ancient Near East, and all the cultures probably going back to like uh mid to late Bronze Age and back, is like a cultural like touchstone for me. I love like the mythology of those cultures. I love um, uh, just like the structure and how societies organize themselves. Not that I think we should do that today, but it fascinates me that's how they thought back then. The tools, the architecture, and so like the ancient world uh, really is like the framework through which I look at like fictional and non-fictional fantasy is framed by that, and then you like marry that with Tolkien, and I'm very much so my heritage is like Scottish, Welsh, and Irish, and so I like to joke that I'm like as white as you can get because I've got Swedish, Norwegian, Scottish, Welsh, and Irish, and just barely any English, and nothing else south of that. So I am very very much from the North Atlantic, and so that culture is something that kind of doesn't get like pre-Roman Britain doesn't get a lot of mainstream study, but like pre-Roman Britain, like the Neolithic era, is like fascinating to me. And so like I would love. I've always said that like my two favorite fictional characters are Indiana Jones and Fox Mulder from the X Files. Like an archaeologist who loves adventure and an FBI agent who believes in the weird supernatural. Like if I could combine those characters, that's who I am mentally. And so when I look at ancient culture through that lens, like stories come alive. And so then when I actually sit down to write, most of the stuff I write is for a game about mice. Um, so how does it translate? I don't fully know, but if mice are living in like a semi-feudalistic ancient world,
Primal
um,
mice. Let's do
yeah,
primal
yeah,
mice.
yeah. There you go. And so I
Primal
love to
mice.
bring elements of that into like Mausritter adventures and stuff. But like, I'm a chronic daydreamer, and like in my daydreams, I'm just an archaeologist, and I uncover some weird thing in like ancient Britain that connects to some like ancient global lost civilization. Like that just
Do you
fascinates me.
continue to look into this stuff after you graduated? Because there is a lot of stuff being discovered
Yeah,
nowadays of prehistory civilizations, both in Europe or in Africa or in South America. There was
oh
a
yeah,
lot of has been discovered recently, and one of my you talked about daydreaming. I always say here in the show that we talk about dreams and how I I can't remember my dreams, and I say that's because I daydream so much that when I get to sleep, it's like it's all
yeah,
gone, my friend.
yeah,
You
for
use
sure,
it
for sure.
the day long, and one of the ideas I had was I have this sketch of a Pangea map for Primal Quest,
Hmm.
you know, and I wanted to maybe work with creators from all around the world to create adventures inspired by prehistoric cultures
Yeah,
of
yeah,
those places, like from
yeah,
inspired by the mythology of prehistoric cultures in South America, from
yeah,
prehistoric cultures in North America, in Central America, in Asia, in Southeast Asia,
yeah.
in maybe China, maybe Russia. I don't know, all
Sure.
these different regions. I think they have there's similarities because of technology level, but the culture varies greatly. Like you said about the way they organize it, it's so variant. If you
Hmm.
study, I've been fascinated with South America because I'm from here, so
Sure,
I'm
sure,
like
sure. Yeah.
diving into this, and knowing that South America is the continent with the most languages of
Hmm.
all continents.
Hmm.
And even though there's a lot of different people with different languages and cultures living in it's not one of the largest continents. And but there wasn't so much conflict here as was in other regions. Like
Yeah.
they were able to find archaeological sites and studies that a very small region with 7 different people with different languages,
Hmm.
and they were trading, they were connecting in some way, and they built roads, uh in a prehistoric civilization. So I
Yeah.
think that's a good way for us to have some perspective of
For
ourselves
sure.
too, because
For sure.
as as modern evolved humans, we think we're like the climax of evolution. Like
Yeah.
it is, that's the best way it can be, and we are like this because that's how humans have always been. It is not,
Yeah, and
you
it's
know.
so interesting that you bring that up. So yes, to answer the question of do I continue to study it like every day? Like it's my passion to like study
Nice.
the ancient world. Like even this morning, I'm in the shower and I'm reading an article that just dropped about they found like Neolithic stone structures at the bottom of Lake Michigan, about
Wow. Yeah.
like 40 feet underwater from like a pre-ice age, and like I love that kind of thing. I think it's one of the downsides of. I think the expansion of Christianity across the globe was a good thing, but it had many negative side effects. Where because South America didn't like fit with the understanding of, hey, the world is what was in the Bible. Well, no, the world was much bigger than what was in the Bible, and so there's entire like cultures that just got written out of Western
Yeah.
like history. I'm fascinated with like Mesoamerica and like Brazilian prehistory, and like just I mean, what metropolises are still covered by jungle that there's only
Yeah.
myth and legend of, but they're actually real places that are
Yeah.
waiting to be found. I
Now,
just watched.
yeah.
Yeah,
Now with lasers, they can
yeah,
fly over the Amazon and scan.
yeah,
They are finding sites they never imagined.
yeah,
Things that are aligned with stars, like the
for
same
sure.
stuff that happen in the Middle East, in
Yeah,
Egypt, and
yeah,
in all of those places. That think, wow, marvels of architecture. Like in the solstice, this part of the
yeah,
temple aligning with the stars. They did this in South America, in the Amazon.
yeah,
We thought those people were just nomads that were traveling. They had a small tribe with huts.
yeah.
No, they had villages, they have cities, they had roads, they had temples, they had you
Oh
know
yeah.
what's
So
really something.
there's like a little thread if I can pull on it just a little bit. So I like all of that fascinates me so much that actually when I was in university, I wrote my thesis on the first 200 years AD of the Roman Empire, but that was my secondary like decision. The first thesis I was going to write, I brought it before my advisor, and the title of it was "The Pyramids of Atlantis," and I was going to be making an argument that, and this is like goes down some really weird rabbit trails. So I think this is the perfect place to talk
Yeah,
about it.
yeah,
Like because I believe the Bible is scripture and a historical record. I believe that there was a global like deluge that wiped everything out, but there was a culture that existed for several thousand years before that. What did that look like? Well, my thesis was going to make this argument that the reason why we have pyramid structures across the globe, across cultures, was that Pangea like was a thing, but it's more recent than we would think of it. And there was a culture that existed on Pangea, and there's reasons why like you have in like Scotland
have
alignment with the
have you ever
stars.
have you ever seen the documentary called Ancient Apocalypse on Netflix?
Yes, yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah,
I saw that, and
yeah,
I love that because a lot of things in that. I was like, oh, I was going to write a paper about some of these things, but my advisor
yeah,
like just like said, no, there's going to be no real evidence for it, so so don't follow this. But like, I had this idea that like, what if the flood broke apart the ancient continent and like separated cultures, things got wiped out. So then later, after like the migration of peoples from the steppe across the globe, after the ice age, they would show up in this place and they would see these like they seem like man-made mountains, and they would try and replicate it, and they would build pyramids. And so there was like a culture that existed before, and I just wondered, um, could there be credence to this like mytho history that exists in scripture that even Orthodox Christians view as like some sort of like mytho history? Like there is a mythology to it, um,
yeah.
but could it be that it actually maybe was grounded in a more concrete historical reality? Like not so much that there was like alien technology and they were like flying
Oh
cars
no.
before, but
Yeah,
like
no.
at least these cultures were not like you said, nomads or
Yeah.
like ignorant cavemen. No, like they had scribal classes that wrote things down. They did math that was like bordering what we do in advanced calculus today. Like there was a culture. What did it look like? Where did it
We
go?
lost we lost so much, so
Yeah,
it's really hard to know.
yeah,
I try not to get, oh, I think that's true, because a lot of us saying it is what, ancient apocalypse. The
yeah,
guy makes exactly the same points, and one thing that really stuck with me was, very ancient, maps,
uh-huh,
that were used by the monks during, the Middle Ages to produce new maps,
yeah,
where they used to copy these ancient maps with a continent down the south, like when it's Antarctica, or
yeah, 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 yeah,
that
yeah.
that hadn't been found up to that
Yeah.
age. And after some point, they stopped drawing that.
Right, right.
But when they discovered, they continue. Like when it's weird. Like this science, this is strange uh, remnants of something they can't quite explain what it is, but it is there. you know and
Yeah,
what you said about the deluge, the floods, and if something mystical, mythological in a way.
yeah,
But if you look at the cultures all around the world that had
yeah,
this, they all mention a flood in a
yeah,
way,
yeah.
you know
And
and
what's
and
great,
after and some of them, with the flood comes, someone from a different land
yeah,
that brings them gifts and teach them
right.
how to do stuff, and they all build pyramids, and they all,
Yeah,
align
yeah,
with the stars and stuff. So even though, I am very skeptical,
sure.
even though I am, there is all these strange things that makes you wonder. And but I mean, as a creator, like, I don't care if it is true or not. I'm gonna use this for my
Sure,
games,
sure.
so that's,
Well, and
yeah.
I think there's like just some really cool stories that like because like Christianity for maybe 1500 years of its existence like got scared of like supernatural and like really tried to just like ground itself. There's early thoughts that existed in like the early church and like before the early church in Judaism, and like the Hebrew religion, and then the other religions of the Middle East and um, like the Mesopotamia region, but like all of them trace that there were these like divine beings that came down that taught culture,
Mhm.
and that showed like how to do warfare, how to do agriculture, and like there's traces of that even in the Bible. Like Genesis chapter 6 talks about how there were the sons of God, these angelic beings that come down. They do something with humankind and they produce these like divine human hybrids that are like these giant warriors. And I'm just like, first off, if that is real history, that's super crazy, but also like that's a touchstone for just about any kind of high fantasy.
Yeah,
I love I'm going to butcher his name, but Gontijo, who's from Brazil. He wrote Into the
yeah,
Bronze, and he like pulls from some of these elements. So like Into the Bronze, Primal Quest, like I think there's like
yeah.
so much that you can explore that isn't Tolkien-esque fantasy, isn't Jack Vance fantasy, isn't that kind of stuff. Like
Oh yeah.
let's go into like this weird. I think there was a comic called The Goddamned, that is very much.
Yes.
That comic was so cool. I mean, it was very graphic and mature. So I wouldn't recommend it to folks in my congregation. But man, it was like it explored the imagination of what was the world like then, the crazy, the weird, the supernatural, the barbaric, yet there's still culture. And so it just fascinates me, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, for sure. And then, that comedy, goddamn, it's something that I saw just glimpses, because it's something that uh kind of would inspire a little bit of Primal Quest, but it's really hard to find. But
Hmm.
it's something that I recommend too. I heard great things, and the little bit that I saw, it's really
Yeah.
fantastic. Uh, Matthew, we talked about stuff from the culture that inspired you, but also would like to ask you, maybe other creators or artists, writers, whatever, individuals that through the way they work, the way they do their crafts, or the way they position themselves in the scenes, or they talk about whatever life, the way they do
Yeah.
things. that inspires you or serves you as a role model, or maybe you learned a lot from. And I
Yeah.
was wondering if you could share a little bit about this with us, or maybe some of these creators that you admire and you try to maybe emulate in any way.
For sure. So my like introduction to the old school Renaissance or OSR or indie TTRPG actually like was through fifth edition. I watched like a fifth edition module being reviewed by Ben Milton of Questing Beast,
Oh
and I was
yeah.
like, "Oh, this Ben Milton guy, he seems kind of cool." The next video I watched was he was reviewing that like early edition that was produced by Lost Pages of Into the Odd by Chris McDowell, and I was like, "That
Hmm.
game sounds so cool." And then it clicked that I actually had a game already saved on my computer that I'd never played or even tried to read, but was similar to Into the Odd. It was called Mausritter. So I reread Mausritter, thought it was amazing, and joined the Mausritter Discord and got introduced to Isaac Williams. And so Isaac was really like the first inspiration for me because Isaac was like super inviting, and like was building like this was the early days of Mausritter was building a community and like empowering people to be creators. So I thought that was really cool. I joined a game jam that was not related to Mausritter, but I posted like some notes on it, and then Yohai Gal, who was in the Mausritter Discord, Yohai like direct messaged like me, and at this point, I think Karen had maybe been out like 2 months. And I was like, "Whoa, you're the creator of that human version of Mausritter." Because in my mind, Karen was a hack of Mausritter. Because I didn't know, you know.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But like Yohai, like he decided out of just the kindness of his heart that he would
He's
edit.
amazing. Yeah.
Oh, he Yohai is like the best. He edited my little game jam submission, and like really helped me with like development and stuff. It was
He
just a
helped me
super
a lot with The Dead Are Coming, Screams
yeah.
Among the Stars,
Oh
Wonder
yeah.
of Time. He is incredible.
Yeah, and so like Yohai was super encouraging, and I think it was between like the encouragement of Isaac and Yohai that I was like, I'm already an encouraging person. I can do this for people as well. And so that kind of like pushed me into the scene more. Yohai kept telling me to create stuff, so I would create stuff. Yohai would then edit it and tell me I was too wordy, so cut it down. I was like, okay, this is constructive. Um, but then like joining the scene on Twitter, like Chris McDowell was like the godfather of my favorite system. But like then Chris
Yeah.
McDowell's reaching out to me, telling me he likes stuff I'm doing, and I was like, wow, this is really cool. And then just through the whole process, like meeting artists. I got connected with Felipe Faria, who was doing
Felipe
some
Faria, yeah.
yeah, like amazing person, and I have a great
He
relationship
is.
with
Yeah.
Felipe now. Like Fernando Salvatierra, we connected. It was super amazing, and so like these people who I viewed as like the pinnacle of creation were now accepting me as a peer,
Yeah.
and
It's
I was like,
incredible, right?
yeah, and
I
it's
can't believe
super
it.
humbling.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I was just like, this is super cool. And then to like kind of like come up alongside guys like Colin Lesueur, who are creating in the same space that I am, and yeah, so inspiration, like ever, like I mean. I'm not just saying this because I'm on your show, but Diego, you've been super like inspirational to me as well, and like
Thank you, my
uh, I've
friend. Yeah.
I've shamelessly stolen from Screams Amongst the Stars things that I put into Lilliputian that I just thought were like so like the way you did like the stress mechanic was so cool. And I was like, oh, like I need to have that I kind of idea. And so what I love about this scene is you can't help but
It's
get
very
into it.
promiscuous, right? We all, yeah, sharing and stealing with each other. But I think it's, for the most part, I think it's very respectful. It's
Yeah, oh for
very
sure.
from the heart, and
Yeah.
it's very out of love. Like, you made amazing things. I wish I had done this, so I'm gonna, try to emulate you,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
you are who I want to be in a way, right?
Sure. Yeah.
For
And
me, I
definitely
feel like
and give
that a
credit.
lot.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's so good. And so like um I couldn't nail down who my inspiration is. It's this community is inspiring to me, and for different reasons. Like I don't. like personally, the rules system for Morkborg is not the way I would play a role playing game. But gosh, that community and the art and Johan, like it's inspiring. And it even though I'm doing game things differently, the aesthetic inspires me. Old school essentials. I love everything that Gavin Norman and like Necrotic Gnome have done. The game's more dense than I would ever do, but it inspires me. I'm an Into the Odd fanboy,
Wow.
and
And it's one of the simplest, easiest ways to play
I know,
D&D, right?
yeah, no, I know, but for me, like Into the Odd, I've said this multiple
Oh
times.
yeah.
Like Into the Odd is it like not to be absolutist, but I don't know that it can ever be improved. Like that's just yeah, you can add bits and pieces to it, but that for me is the game I will play. And who knows, 5 years down the road, it might be something else. But like
Yeah, yeah.
Into the
Well,
Odd is
for
where I
me,
live.
it changes a lot, but
Yeah,
it isn't like this, and but I do like all of them for
for
different
sure,
reasons,
for sure.
So yeah, yeah. But I mean, I'm the same way. Like, if I'm gonna play something and I don't want to stress out, and let's just play Primal Quest or use the
Sure.
Primal Quest system to
Yeah.
play anything. I'm playing Star Wars with my kids. I'm playing kind of Ninja City from Joy Royale
Yeah.
with Primal Quest kind of system. It's a very flexible. As into the it is kind of inspired by Into the Odds, but it has a
Mhm.
little bit fates and
Yeah,
everything.
for
So
sure,
yeah,
for sure. I love it.
yeah, I totally understand. And in this, the intention wasn't for you to like to point one inspiration. Like all those people are very inspiring, and it's
Mhm.
very cool to see. Uh, so many different things can inform the way we create, right? And that's the still like an artist way to do it. Like
Yeah.
if you steal from just one person, that's plagiarism. But
Right,
since you're like
exactly.
stealing from like 20, it's originality, right? Like
Exactly, exactly.
yeah. Matthew, are you working on any particular project right now that you would like to talk a little bit about?
Yeah, so I'm hitting the grindstone hard right now. We just finished our Kickstarter for Tomb of a
Yeah.
Thousand Doors, which is a Mausritter mega dungeon. Over 40 contributors to it that I'm doing the project managing for, all the layout. Um, and so yeah, I've got a team of editors that we're working together to edit the whole document down, and then I'm doing all the layout, and Fernando Salvatore is doing like a bunch of the
Oh
artwork.
yeah. I've
um,
seen the maps on Twitter.
Oh, it's so
Amazing work.
good.
Yeah.
It's so good. So yeah, that's we're finishing that project. I actually just had a phone call yesterday with Tony Vacinda, of Plus One EXP, because he and I partnered on the actual like Kickstarter of that. And we think we're going to be able to get it out to the public way sooner than our
Awesome.
estimated
Yeah.
dates on Kickstarter, which is always fun because you know how it is with Kickstarter. It's like, hey, it'll be this time, and then you're 2 years later. It's like, I know it's in development,
Yeah.
but like I want it. And so
Yeah.
so I'm working on that, but I also have um, I've got another Mausritter like campaign that I've been jotting notes down for probably the last like month and a half, um, that I think I'm going to release first part of next year. It's the first thing I've actually like taken the time to let it distill and wait to actually like work on it. Most of the time I get an idea, I jot it down, then that night I go and I try and do it as quick as I can and publish them super fast,
Wow.
which is why I've published so much.
Yeah.
But I haven't like let it marinate. And so I want to try a new way of doing it, let it marinate, and hopefully produce something that's super cool. And so that's it's very like high fantasy. There's a very big magic item, that depending on how you get it or who gets it, it could affect the entire culture. And so yeah, but that's what I'm working on in the background right now.
Nice. A lot of stuff, and I'm excited for Tomb of a Thousand Doors and see what else you're cooking on for those intrepid mice.
Yes, exactly, exactly.
Would you say you have maybe a mark or maybe a voice that you leave in your work? Something that people would look and say, "Oh, yeah, that's Matthew game."
Mm.
And if you do, could you share with us what you believe it is? Uh, the market, your weird market you live in your work?
Yeah, I I think if I were to like try and pin it down, I wasn't the first one to do it by any means. Um, but when I write an adventure, it might be because I'm the forever game master of my world. Um, I I like things that leave room for the game master to fill in the blanks. So when I write adventures, it's like 80% complete and I publish it because that other 20% I want the game master to fill. They have the liberty to fill in the gaps. And so it's not that I'm saying, okay, here's some stats, but I'm not going to fill out all the stats. No, I'll fill out all the stats, but like how this creature interacts with the players via an encounter. Um, I want there to be a level of like variability so that you could play the adventure 6 times and get 6 different outcomes. So I love putting like random tables to generate the facts as opposed to just giving you block text. Here is what this guy does. Um, so I don't know if that's like a mark that says this is a Matthew Morris game, but it's definitely a mark that says Matthew Morris exists within this style of games.
Yeah, nice. I love those things too. I think it's this approach to making role playing games or adventures more like toys instead of
Hmm.
this mentality that we had from the 80s and 90s that RPGs are like telling a story. We compare it to movies, to comics, or to books, and we have to follow this path. And the GM is here to tell this great epic, and
Hmm.
it's not like that. It is a game first
Hmm.
and foremost, so it has to have this uncertainty. It's a very important thing, I
Yeah.
think, to for meaningful play. For game to be gameable. So those parts, those variants and tables, and even for the GM, because
Yeah.
as you're saying, like we are forever GM, so we like to make things that it's fun for the GM to play, and they can experience it different every time they
Yeah,
play. Because
exactly.
otherwise, we would get bored, right? It would be like, oh, I have to run this adventure again, and it
Right.
would be, I don't know, remiss if we would do that.
Yeah. And I
Having the tools to do different nowadays, yeah.
for sure. And I feel like as a game master, I do as minimal prep for a session as I can. Um, because I love random tables. And as a game master, I think one of the reasons why I'm so content never being a player again, because as a GM, like once we get into the session, like I don't know the outcome. And so when I randomly roll it, and I roll all my dice like in front of everyone, so I'm never fudging dice rolls. And so for me, I get just as much excitement when the random tables and the dice unfold the story, which I think is probably why I like solo play so much because I get to be the player and the game master with
Yeah.
an oracle. But like for me, so when I write things, I love just putting those tables in there just to like throw random stuff. And I think another thing that I love to put in games is something that'll just like shock the senses. So you'll be doing like this like super high fantasy castle exploration, only then to realize it's not a castle, it's a spaceship. And I'm definitely not the first one to do that. But I love that like shock of setting. Because then it like we like everyone pulls their real world like knowledge of Star Wars into it, and they're like, oh, okay, well now my character's gonna look for a cockpit. Well, no, your character doesn't know what a cockpit is, but let's try and see how that fleshes out, and so I think that's kind of fun.
Yeah, I think it's one of the pleasures of GMs and creators is they set up all these contests, this location, and they hide like those special things.
Yeah.
And when someone finds one, it's really a joy. Like in House of the Blood King, that
Oh yeah.
has this bottle with these eyes in the liquid, and was one of my favorite comments was from someone that's saying that was one of their favorite things in the adventure, like that just that one detail.
Oh, I love it.
It's because it is like the game is only experienced as they play, right? And the narrative is formed as they play. It's not there. It's not ready.
Yeah.
You just you set up the toys, and when the kids show up and start playing with the toys, that's how
Exactly,
the story
exactly.
unfolds. Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah. Matthew, what would you say was the weirdest game you played, or a very weird game you played recently that made an impression on you? And that can be tabletop role playing game, a board game, video games, any kind of game that was weird and made an impression on you, and can tell us a little bit about it.
Yeah, so I had the opportunity probably a couple months ago to play a one shot in liminal horror, that Josh Demansky actually GM'd the game for us, and it was weird, in a good way. When it comes to like touchstones, like I don't read a lot of like thriller horror. I don't read a lot of like supernatural horror. It just doesn't like cross my bookshelf. I really loved the X Files, but that was about my only touchstone to that genre. Um, I guess I watched Twin Peaks as well, and I thought that show was really cool. But uh, the way Josh GM'd the game and talked about the setting, and this was a playtest of what became and is now published as the Shelterwood Inn, which is a liminal horror and triangle agency crossover. But in playing it, it was so weird, and like the way things were connected was so it was different than any way I would ever think about something. Um, it hooked me, got me fascinated, and I just want to play liminal horror constantly. But I don't feel like as a game master, I have like a pulse on that genre like perfectly. So I don't know that I could run it and really like evoke the realness of it. But I love reading liminal horror modules because I'm just like it opens my eyes to a whole new way of thinking about horror, about thriller. That's so non-linear to me, that I'm just like, this is so cool. I want to experience a game like this more. So yeah, definitely was a uh, it affected me not just in the game but outside. I'm trying to think about how I can implement some of those horror elements that aren't like shock horror; they're like thriller horror into the things I write, and even into the way I uh, like GM a game.
Hello, weirdos. This is Diogo Nogueira, and I'm back with a word from our sponsors. Me. I just released a new game called Cosmosaurus, in which you play a dinosaur space ranger who protects the galaxy from evil threats such as slime bankers, undead pirates, and Cosmosaurus from a void dimension. It's a game with a runes light system inspired by Forged in the Dark and Lasers and Feelings. It comes with a bunch of tables for you to generate content for it. If you know my games, they're really easy to play and they have tools to help you improvise and play with low prep. It's an ideal game for one-shots, short campaigns, and introducing new people to the hobby, and it's a really perfect family game. I play with my kids all the time. It's a game inspired by Saturday morning cartoons. It's really well illustrated by Lucas Kowalski from Poland, and with a great layout by Guilherme Gontijo. It's a really fun game. You should check it out on DriveThruRPG, itch.io, or exclusively in print on exaltedfuneral.com. I have many other games there, check them out. All the links are in the show notes, so click there. And let's get back to Weird with our chat. Sorry,
Oh yeah, good.
would you care, maybe trying to give an example of one of those elements would be, of thriller, and how hard it is to implement? Because yeah, of course, like we usually run games of adventure
Hmm.
and horror. Horror can be kind of adventure that goes bad, right?
Uh huh.
But
Uh huh.
sometimes they're just people in the wrong place at the wrong time. So when I used it to I played D&D, horror for me was very hard. But as I got into kind of old school gaming,
Yeah.
and old school gaming, even though it's fantasy, it has a lot of horror in it,
Sure.
and a lot of the indie creators are really into horror. And even though it's an adventure for you know D&D or Sword and Wizard or any other system, there's a lot of adventures that are really just they're not those. Let's go save someone. It's just there is this
Yeah.
place and you are there and there's terrible things and yeah, there is treasure, but you're probably gonna die too. So
Yeah, this
so-
this adventure was so like there wasn't even like I I think what was so weird and so cool about it was there wasn't necessarily an objective other than your car broke down and it's raining and it's dark and you're hearing a noise in the woods. So you're like walking down and because it's liminal horror, it's like there's not dwarves and elves. It's not fantasy. Like it felt real world to me. And I was like, so there's like this like edginess of, well, this could happen to me. And so like you end up getting to this like small little town, and there's like weird stuff happening at the little motel, and the way it was being like described to us, it was just like I could actually see this happening in real life, and this is weird. And so then our adventures, we ended up getting like stranded in a an old gas station, and there was something there, and that's another weird thing that like I think from my own personal life, I've been fascinated with like folklore and cryptids. So like I'm a firm believer in Sasquatch, and I live in the Pacific Northwest, so like I know he's out there. So the way this was setting up, I was like, oh no, are we being hunted by a Sasquatch? Well, no, we weren't. It was some like weird body horror thing that occurred. Um, but like just the way in which there was evocative, real world sensory things that were coming across. Most of the time, when I try and use like evocative real world in fantasy, there's a disconnect. But man, when you're running like a set in the human real world of today, it just brought it to life, and it was so eye opening. And like the sensory as a player, like I felt like I was there, and I think being like a daydreamer really led into that. Like I could see it, I could feel it, I could smell it, I could taste it.
yeah.
It was fun.
Wow, awesome. That sounds fantastic. And you mentioned, being a believer of cryptids
Yeah.
and how's that? Have you ever seen anything? Have you ever go out hunting to see if you can spot anything? What how is your experience with cryptids?
Yeah. So Um, as a family, we would go camping every year, and we still do. So we're going on like 33 years of camping, and we camp at the same spot in the same section of forest in the Mount Hood National Forest area. And I don't know how old I was. Um, I was young, but I got up in the middle of the night to just go use the bathroom, which was standing outside the tent and going in the forest. Um, And I was, like, sure there were eyes on me, which now looking at it as an adult, I'm like, "Yeah, I really hope it was a cryptid and not a person, because 'cause that'd be weird." But, like, I mean, you know the feeling, like, something's watching me, and I don't know. And because of my faith, because of my spirituality, like, I believe there's a supernatural realm, and so it could be something there, but it felt more tangible. And so then I was in elementary school, and there was a book series about like a cryptid hunter. So I went down the rabbit trail, or since we're talking about cryptids, the jackalope trail, and I got fascinated with North American and specifically Pacific Northwest folklore. Um, and we'd still go camping, and then we'd go on like night hikes. And whether it was a result of being in the wilderness and that affecting my brain space, or being in the wilderness with all the backloading of all these folk tales, they they married together. Um, but I'll tell you what, I'm a full grown adult now, and when I hike alone, the hair on the back of my neck is always still just a little bit standing up. Like, and sure, it could be a black bear. Sure, it could be a cougar. Um, but it always just feels a little bit different. My father-in-law has had experiences with Sasquatch-esque kind of things. He was a fisher in Northern California, in the forest, and has a friend who saw one. And they never go back to that fishing spot because there was just something that was weird that occurred. Um, but we do every year. I lead a night hike So I know the trails of this campsite. Like literally, it can be pitch black and I can walk it and not stub my toe because I've just done it for 30 plus years. And so we'll lead a group where there's no headlamps, no flashlights. You can't bring your cell phone. And we'll have like 15 folks and you just put a hand on the shoulder and I lead the way. And we go through and we always make it to the right destination. But it's dense Pacific Northwest, Douglas fir forest. And one time, this was 4 years ago, it gets down to a bridge that crosses over the river and we're laying there on the bridge looking at the stars because there's no light and it's beautiful. And me and my buddy, we hear something on the other end of the bridge. And we both know the animals that are in the Pacific Northwest, and it didn't sound like that. And then, like, of the 15 people that are there, at least 7 of them just have like this really weird, there's something here. And it was pitch black. The stars and the moon are kind of illuminating. But down in the darkness, you could just, whether we audibly heard it or could like feel it in our chest, there was just a low growl or like grumbling of something, and we were very sure we were being
Wow.
watched. And it was so, it was like otherworldly. Um, Now we found out the next year that there was cougars over there, so it very well could have just been a cougar, but it didn't sound like a cougar, and it didn't act like, it was just weird. We got dive bombed by bats about like 20 minutes later. We're laying there and a bat literally landed on my face, completely unrelated, but also just like spooky enough to like, we're leaving. Like this is something weird is happening
Yeah.
here.
That's
Uh,
enough,
yeah,
that's
yeah.
enough.
I don't
Yeah.
know if there's some Native American burial ground that is like
Yeah.
we've accidentally disturbed, if there's a Sasquatch or a cougar, but now the bats are after us. We're going home. And we definitely went faster back than we had made our way there because it was like something is here. I don't know what it is, but I don't want to find out.
Wow. Yeah. And have you ever, had any other kind of experience with the supernatural and otherworldly, even could be ghosts or aliens, or
Sure.
even those really deep religious experience like
Yeah.
spirituality, like through prayer? Have you ever reached a different space of being? I don't
Sure.
know.
Sure. Yeah. So I've had um so on like the spiritual side, I'm a very firm believer in the supernatural realm and that there are good forces and evil forces, and they are at war with each other. What that war looks like, it's not swords and that, but it's um, there's like a tug of war over humanity's soul, and I definitely can say I've experienced um, what pop culture would call like demonic activity, um, potentially even demonic possession. I'm not from the medieval school of thought that any mental illness is just demons. No, there's very real mental. Our brain has chemistry outside of the supernatural. So, but very real like demonic manifestations that was weird, um, but I felt equipped to handle and deal with just from my understanding of like biblical truths. But then I've also had on the flip like some good experiences. I remember one time I had this dream and it was, so you said you don't remember dreams. I'm that weird guy who remembers every dream every night and it's sometimes it's a burden to bear, but like one of these
Oh yeah.
dreams was so different than any dream I'd ever had. I found out later it was called like lucid dreaming or something like that, but it was this like super ethereal, I was on just a single person boat, like floating through space, but I was on water, but the water was so transparent you couldn't tell, and it's like the cosmos were around me, and I'm just
Wow.
like slowly, and the only way you could tell there was water was there was just little ripples around the boat, but then there were like mountains, like Mount Everest and K2, like the Himalayas, were just like there in space, and it was just the mountain, but it was also like the root of the mountain, but the root of the mountain went beneath this crystal clear water in space, and it was just like this otherworldly, like the ambient noises that were there were different than anything my natural ears have ever heard. It was just this like surreal, I don't know where my brain was going, but there was a peace, there was a calmness, and it was weird, and it stuck with me. And so now, like, and this was probably 20 years ago, um uh but like when I'm in places of like where I'm low, um I can close my eyes and just like be, begin to pray that the Lord brings me peace, but also like I imagine in my mind's eye that peace that I had there, and like whether it's through just the power of my mind, or I believe that the Holy Spirit is also like helping me get there. I come to this place of like peace and rest, and everything is gone. I'm clear. I can have clarity to do and
Nice.
think what I need to do. Yeah.
It's kind of a prayer meditation kind of
Yeah,
thing that you
for sure.
imagine that plays like visualization. So it is similar to what the stuff that people do. So yeah, very
Yeah.
very cool. Do you have any other hobbies besides role playing games?
Yeah, I love disc golf. For folks who don't know what that is, it's playing golf but with frisbees. It's way uh,
Just
yeah,
yeah,
there's a barrier to entry that doesn't exist. It's just anyone can do it. I love the game of golf. I love the concept of golf. And so, but I'm not good at golf, but I'm good at throwing a frisbee. And so I love disc golf. That's fun. Outside of role playing
but
games,
what
oh yeah,
do you have a hole you have to throw
yeah,
the
yeah,
frisbee
yeah,
in? Oh yeah,
yeah, yeah. So
is it
there,
in the ground or where's the hole? It's like
no,
in like a
yeah, so it's like a metal cage that has a basket, and it has chains that hang down, and so
oh
when the disc hit the chains, it like stops its flight and it drops into the basket, and
oh
it's about like
like
2 inches in diameter.
basketball, like golf with basketball
Sure, yeah,
with
yeah, yeah, yeah.
frisbee. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
and they sit about 3 feet high, and so and there's courses and all sorts of things, and there's courses
Nice.
all
Yeah.
across the world. It's actually like a very it's a rapidly growing sport. The professional side is actually like very um, it's becoming more and more lucrative for professional players. And it's a lot of fun. It's just a great opportunity. It's like it's hiking with a purpose, because you go out in the
So
woods,
it
you
will
throw
be
frisbees.
bigger than tabletop role playing games too. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe, I don't know, but they actually have a disc golf board game that uses D20s,
Oh
and
wow.
it's so cool. It's called Birdie. It's great. I highly recommend it to anyone. It marries some of my favorite passions: board games, tabletop role playing games, and disc golf together, which are good. But yeah, hobbies. I love to just nerd out on history podcasts. Which is a I don't know if
You
that's a hobby
recommend
or.
on one?
Yeah, I definitely. It's on YouTube. It's History Time by Pete Kelly. He'll do documentaries probably every 2 months or so. Very well produced documentaries, like 2 hour long, where he'll go into like just. He did one on the Amazon, as well as like Mesoamerica and like ancient Mayan culture, that was just eye opening. He's from Britain, so he'll do like Neolithic Britain, and like pre-Roman Britain. I think that
Nice.
one's really good. I'm also a huge theology nerd, so I love listening to theology podcasts. My absolute favorite is the Naked Bible Podcast, which is a really great name. And the person who runs the Naked Bible Progress podcast, he just died last year, but his thesis was on the weird supernatural, and looking at ancient Near Eastern myth. And seeing where there's overlaps with like biblical text, and really helping produce a theological framework that makes space for the weird, and the supernatural, um, not running away from it, but acknowledging the reality that there is just more than meets the eye. Um, and he has another podcast called Paranormal. So it's like paranormal but peer reviewed, like journal articles where
Mm,
he looks at like weird and strange occurrences that have academic attestation and like reporting on. So he does.
wow,
He's
that
very
sounds
much.
cool.
Oh, it's so cool. He goes into like a bunch of like ancient aliens and alien abduction, and like abductee testimonies, and then looking at the academic side, whether it's psychosomatic or like the psychology of it, or from a theological standpoint, where the church has written all these people off as crazy. He's like, the church is always really like too fast to write people off. Like, let's actually explore these, pull these threads a little bit more. Could there be supernatural things that are occurring that actually fit within a biblical framework? And that kind of stuff fascinates me. I've never been abducted by aliens, but I wouldn't be surprised if 90% of the people who
N-
say they were actually have
Not that we
something that occurred.
remember, no.
Yeah,
Not that
exactly.
we remember, right? Yeah.
I have these two weird marks that are right here that I can't figure out where they came from, but and there's like 15 minutes of like history I can't remember. No, I'm joking.
Yeah. Do you know? I want to ask you this, but I know you grew up religious and anything, but have you ever had any experience with altered states of awareness? And that can be either through sometimes some religious practice with music too, or deep meditation, or the
Sure.
use of psychedelics.
Yeah, so the tradition in which I come up in is like the Pentecostal side of evangelicalism, and so if you're
Oh
familiar,
yeah, here in
um,
Brazil we have even Christian
yeah,
religions that do make use of psychedelics, like the
for
Santo
sure,
Daime or something like this. Yeah.
yeah, and so um, I would say I've definitely had experiences. Some I believe were emotional manipulation, where I felt like I was having an experience, but it was fabricated by humanity. It was set in such a way that it brought me there. But I now looking back at it was like, I think that was more just my psychology making me think. But then I've had other experiences where it was like so out of the blue, there was no fabrication, um, that I can only acknowledge that I believe it was a spiritual experience that definitely I was in a different place. Not like I was like astral projecting or like transported to like some higher level of consciousness, but it was there was I had eyes to see and ears to hear, um, spiritual realities that if I wasn't attuned to God or was not disciplined, I would have missed. And so I believe like, um,
Could you describe any of those
yeah,
experiences?
yeah. So I believe, that, um, that the Bible talks about like gifts that the Holy Spirit gives to folks where they can, whether it's have a word of knowledge or a word of wisdom about someone. Um, and I've been in situations where I don't even know a person, but I feel very compelled that I know something about this person. Um, who I so we've done like ministry on the streets of Portland to the homeless for 20 plus years, which I've seen weird things and I've seen beautiful things. Um, but like people I've never come in contact with, I have no touchstone on them at all. But like I just feel in my soul and in my spirit that I know something about them, and it's not just like a nebulous that could work for anyone. It's like specific about that person, like the name of a family member or a specific situation that they experienced, and I feel this overwhelming burden to share it with them, and then further that and be, can I pray for you? And I do it, and it's probably happened more than 10 times, less than 20 times, where I've said this, um, and they were like, how did you know that? And I'm like, to be honest with you, I believe that the Holy Spirit just gave it to me. And I felt this desire and this impression I needed to share with you, and wanted to just know if there's anything I could pray with you about. And because it was real, it was knowledge I couldn't have but did have, and that there was a trust that, okay, you're whether you're doing some sort of weird thing, and the drugs talk to you, or there is a higher power that revealed this about me. It was something that was secret, but you knew it, and as a result, it broke down any walls, any barriers. I was able to pray with people, and begin to see transformation in their life, because I believe that there is a God who knows all things, who sees all things, and at random points in time in human history, He'll allow people to have knowledge they shouldn't have to break down barriers, and reveal truth to someone. And so that's
Yeah,
happened on multiple occasions, and it's weird. It's weird.
yeah.
Like
That's
there's
a lot
there's
how many artists say how our art works, right? Like
Mhm.
as if we're only vessels of this,
Exactly.
communal consciousness that creates these ideas in a way. So
Hmm.
there is similarities to that too. And I think even though I am an atheist,
Yeah.
those are very very similarities with science too. Like everything came from the same thing, like the Big Bang. Like everything is made of the
Sure.
same thing, and there was nothing before, and when we die, there is nothing after. So it's kind of we go back to the creator, because if there was nothing before and there is nothing after,
Yeah.
it's the same thing. It's everything's it's connected in a way, and it's very weird to see that in various different areas of culture, of spirituality, and even
Yeah.
of science. So yeah,
And it's interesting how, if you take things back like 40, 50 years ago, there was like this like staunch line between religion and science, and how they were like on diverging paths. But it more and more, as like astrophysics, and the more we study molecular biology, and the more we study like theoretical physics, and even the human psyche, they actually seem to be like merging back. And
yeah. In some
it's
aspects, yeah, yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Not
I mean,
not
there's
yeah, not the moral aspect of it, but like
sure,
the
sure, sure, sure.
spiritual. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, but there is like this like pointing back to, there's something more. One calls it religion and faith and a deity. The other is like there's some sort of design. We can't
yeah,
put our finger on it just yet. Like math is brilliant. I'm not a math person,
yeah.
but like just the fine tuning design of math,
Yeah.
even the fine
The
tuning of our
architecture of
universe.
reality, it's very
Yeah,
well made, right? It's very
yeah, yeah.
very well designed. Yeah.
It definitely seems like it points to some kind of design, whether
Yeah,
that
that's the
is.
best game. Like people say, "Oh, it's the best." No, this is the best game, and
Yeah,
we're playing it.
exactly,
Everybody,
exactly,
yeah,
exactly. And it's fun to explore and try and figure out what it is, you know?
yeah, for sure. Now, Matthew, I would like to get into the more whimsical
Yeah,
questions to try to get to know you a bit better, but in playing a little bit, and that's why I made some new questions.
sure.
So my first one, since we talked about dreaming a little bit, and if you could control your dreams, if you could like, I want to dream about this. Like, what would you dream about? Like, if you could control your dreams, what would be the first thing you would dream about?
Yeah, it would be, I would take like my daydreams and put them into my night dreams. And I would love to explore the ancient world by way of, if I could control it in my dreams, I would make a world in which war and like conflict today wasn't existing, for the sole purpose of, and this is terrible. It should be the sole purpose should be so that there isn't human suffering, which that's a beautiful side effect. But in my dream world, there would be no war, because there wouldn't be ancient culture and artifact that was being destroyed because of war. Because I'm fascinated with the Middle East and the history of the Middle East, I would say probably 90% of it has been lost due to 1,000 years of
Oh
war,
yeah.
But like in my dream world, it wouldn't have been destroyed by war. And I could go and I could be an archaeologist. In my dreams, I wouldn't even want to go to the ancient world and live it. I would want to be here and now discovering it. but then also like weird bleeding over of the supernatural so that I could also be like the X-Files. And so like I'd be doing an archaeological dig and accidentally open up something that there was a demon that had been trapped, like and so then
Yeah,
I'm doing that whole side of things. But I think that would be the world I would have in my dreams.
nice. Yeah, cool, cool. And if you could live in any fiction world setting, from games or from movies, from comics, from any kind of media, what fictional world would you like to live in? It can be one of the worlds you created too, if you want to
Yeah.
talk about it a little bit.
To be Yeah, I think one of two would be where I want to live, and both of which are worlds that were created by C.S. Lewis. The first would be I would love to live in Narnia, um, the, the Chronicles of Narnia series, just about this mythical world ruled over by Aslan, this great lion king and creator. And it's like high fantasy, beautiful area that exists as like a world that is separate from our own that you can only access through magical ways. I think that'd be really cool. And the other C.S. Lewis, before he wrote that, actually before the Second World War, he had started writing what is now known as the Space Trilogy, and it's like early like 1930s sci-fi. I highly recommend it to anyone who's never read it. It's 3 books. The first one is called Out of the Silent Planet, the second one is called Paralandra, and the third one is Of That Hideous Strength. And it's just this world that exists. I mean, it's the 1930s, but without any understanding of space travel. So like it's kind of Jules Verne in setting, but it's a bunch of dudes at Oxford studying ancient linguistics, but then get thrust into a science fiction adventure, and I think that would be a cool world to live in. Um, I love the late Victorian era of like 1890 to 1930, like that section, and that like the world in which scholarship existed then. Like you went to Oxford for 20 years. Sometimes I feel like I'm born before, like out of my time. Like if I could just like live there, get lost in a library with the smell of old books, like that's the world I want to live in.
Yeah, yeah. And what did you do in those worlds? What would you do in Narnia, for example? Who would Matthew be in Narnia?
Oh man. If there was conflict with some evil force, I would love to think that I was a warrior that was allied myself alongside a talking beaver and a centaur, and we went to war against some crazy witch. Um, if it was peacetime, I'd love to think that I just had some sort of epic agricultural center where I was farming all sorts of like weird foods that like I was trading with far off cultures and learning about the culture. And if it was in the space world, I think Matthew would be some sort of um, weird purveyor of ancient mythology, whilst trying to like decipher forgotten scripts of
You would
languages
be a
we don't know.
space archaeologist, right?
Yes, exactly. Did you ever see the movie Prometheus? It's like the sequel or the
Why don't
prequel
we
to it.
have a game about space archaeologists? We need this, right?
I know. I was actually tempted like a year or two ago to try and write a mothership
That's a great
supplement.
theme for a game. Like,
I would
just
love
being
it.
a space archaeologist, like
Yeah.
exploring the vastness of space in the history of space. Like,
A-
imagine.
it's actually funny you bring that up, because I was thinking of writing a mothership thing for it, but I couldn't get into the mothership space. Um, but the little trifold supplement that I wrote for Screams Amongst the Stars, there
Yeah.
is space
Yeah.
archaeology in that, and
Yeah. Because one of the themes from Screamings is that it's not this horror kind of, it's about exploring the weird.
yeah,
So
yeah.
that's something that could work there too. Yeah. And Matthew, if you could have a superpower from comics or superheroes or even RPG characters, what superpower would you choose to have, and what would be the first thing you would do with that?
Oh man. Um, so I would love to be able to. expend energy but not produce lactic acid. So just be able to like endlessly lift heavy things, run far distances, jump really high without experiencing the natural side effects of those. I wouldn't want to be like superhuman, like I wouldn't want to be Superman, but I would like to be like abnormally extra human, if that makes sense.
A
Um,
superhuman vitality kind of way. Like you would be a
yeah,
normal human, but you wouldn't get tired and wouldn't,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah.
And then so that would be like if I wanted to be a hero, if I could just have like a superpower but be no one. I would love the superpower of being able to eat as much as I want but never gain weight.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Oh
And I would
yeah.
put that to use every single
Why
day.
I haven't thought about this yet? That's the
uh,
superpower I want.
I know
Yes.
I,
Yes.
I I don't eat to get full. I don't even eat to get energy. I eat because I love flavor. It just
I
so
love
happens the
flavor.
side
Yeah.
effect of like eating too much
And I'm
flavor
pretty
is
I'm
gaining.
pretty sure I'm emotional eater too.
Oh, me
And
too. Me
anxiety
too.
is, but
Yeah.
I yeah, I love some food. Food is so good, right?
Oh, yeah.
It's art. It's art you can put
Oh,
inside of you.
for sure, for sure. I guess that's another hobby I have. I love to cook steaks, and I'm heavily
Nice.
inspired by a Brazilian steak chef, and so
Oh
I'm more
yeah.
and more.
Oh,
Yeah, his name is Guga. I don't know what his last name is. He has a YouTube channel. He's from Brazil, but I am in love with
okay.
picanha.
Yeah.
Picanha
Oh,
is the way I eat steak these days. It's not an American cut of meat. We don't do
it's
it here.
very good. Yeah.
Oh, it is so good, and to do it right. Um,
Yeah.
I've
That
I've
that
I've learned.
fat on the border of
Oh,
the picanha.
it's so good. You get a nice little sear on
Very
it
good.
and melty
Chef's
butter.
kiss.
Oh yeah.
Chef's kiss.
Oh
Yeah.
yes. Oh yes.
Yeah. And Matthew, uh, know what weird thing from fiction, it can be from games, from movies,
Yeah.
from comics, whatever, that would make real in our world, and why? And that can be a location, a faction, an entity, even like a inner source or power too.
Yeah. I think if it could be real in our world, the universe that J.R.R. Tolkien created in his Legendarium of Middle Earth, in what's most popular, the Third Age, the tail end of the Third Age, going into the Fourth Age with Aragorn becoming king. Um, that world Tolkien envisioned as like this like mytho history of our current world. If I could bring something from fiction into the real world, I would make that a reality. That the history of Middle Earth, all the events of Middle Earth, it is real human prehistory.
Wow. So
The
we have a
elves,
Balrog down
yeah,
here somewhere
exactly. Down
still.
in the depths, the elves that never crossed the Undying Lands. Tolkien says that in the later stages of the Fourth and the Fifth Age, they just faded from existence and are just spirits in the forest now. That we could still find if we're lucky. That the dwarves have gone
Yeah.
under Earth, but someday they will reemerge to rebuild Earth. Like if that was real, now take my archaeologist idea. I want to go find Balerion sunken beneath the sea, and I
Oh
want to
yeah.
I want to bring that back. And so yeah,
I want to
if
find
it,
some swords,
oh
some
yeah, like a nice
shiny in the dark sword. Yeah.
yeah, 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 of Gondolin creation buried in some troll hole. Yeah, I would
Oh
love it.
yeah. And finally, Matthew, do you remember the last time you felt really happy and just grateful for being here and being alive? And if you do, can you share with us when was that and what were you doing?
Yeah, so I again I would say I'm blessed in that I am reminded of that happiness and I experience that happiness every day. It's not that it's a constant 24/7.
Do
Um,
you have a kind of gratitude practice, something that you try to remember to be
yeah, yeah.
grateful and
So
stuff?
yeah, so I pray every day, and I thank the Lord for His
Yeah.
blessings in my life. But also, my wife is just the most amazing woman. I absolutely like. I'm married up. Like she is so out of my league. I don't understand how I was able to latch on and keep her, but I did. And so, like, when I see her, when I interact with her, I'm reminded of just the blessing that I have. And more recently, so going into COVID, we had no kids. Coming out of quarantine, we have two kids, and I have a 3-year-old daughter and a 2-year-old son. And literally every time I see them, it doesn't matter how bad my day has been. It doesn't matter what external pressures come pressing in on me. I see them, and I just see their childlike joy, their childlike faith, their childlike craziness and annoyingness. And it just reminds me that, like, the problems of this world, they can take the back seat for a while, because I just want to experience the joy. Like, happiness comes and goes,
Oh yeah.
like it ebbs and flows, but joy is like a constant line. And I want to live at the steadiness of joy.
Yeah.
And my kids, I mean, my daughter's 3. She loves that I play role-playing games. She thinks dice are really cool. I bought her a set of dice. I bought my 2-year-old son a set of dice. He thinks they're candy, so I'm constantly pulling them out of his mouth. Bad parenting. But they like Perils and Princesses, this new into the odd kind of hack. It's perfect for my 3-year-old daughter. So we created a princess, and now she runs around the house
Yeah, I
in this
bought this.
imaginary
I'm
world.
waiting. Yeah.
Oh, it's so cool. And, like, so she now is experiencing the joy of imagination, which just makes me happy. And so I'm reminded, and I experience happiness every day. And so for that, I'm forever grateful and forever blessed.
Yeah. That's a great thing to remember too. Like you talked about how we have to sometimes forget those problems, those things that are stressing us to be for our kids.
Mhm.
Because I do realize sometimes I'm with my kid, I'm not too present, I'm not being as good as a father as I should be,
Yeah.
because I'm thinking about stuff that I have to do, some for the job, or maybe a Kickstarter I have to prepare, or I have to do this. And it's very hard. Like it's something that I read in books about parenting. Like one of my practice every day that I wake up and I read a page about stoicism and a page about being a better father.
Cool.
And one about this is like letting go of things that is stressing you, and or even that's upsetting. Like even if your kid do something bad to you, you have to let it go and just be the
Yeah.
best you can be for them, because that's only gonna get worse, right?
Sure.
If
Oh,
you
it's
if
so
you're
real.
yeah.
Yeah.
And
And I
we have I what I'm learning from this is like we learn much more from example than like saying, "Oh, you can't do this, you have to do that." Like saying things don't doesn't do anything. Basically, like it's
Right.
just how we show them how we act and what we do is what they will replicate. I think, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah,
No, I think that's so good. And I fail constantly at being like present. And I know that's something that I'm working on more and more. You mentioned setting your phone aside when you're spending time with family. That's um I didn't
I
realize how
fail
much.
at that sometimes
Yeah,
too.
yeah,
But I
yeah.
mean, it's
Well, and I
something
didn't
that
even
we're getting to try, right? Yeah,
yeah, and I didn't even realize how much I was doing it, because it was just like muscle memory. And so, like, I'm gonna set it aside and just be present. And it's so much like more rewarding to be present, like as if that was like some
yeah,
secret knowledge. Like it should make
yeah.
sense, but like sometimes we just forget
Yeah.
that, like, just
Well,
being there.
that's what's. Well, I don't blame us so much because these machines are
Right.
designed to do that with us.
Yeah.
They
Oh, for
made
sure.
like one of the things I'm enjoying with the podcast is that my camera is actually my phone, so I don't have access to my phone. So
I love
I'm
it. Yeah.
distract
Yeah.
free. I'm here totally present, talking to you, asking follow up questions. Maybe if I had a regular webcam and my phone was right here, I don't know. I mean, those things are terrible to distract us. So,
Yeah.
yeah. Matthew, those were all my questions. I'm very, very grateful for being here. And like you shared a lot. I learned a lot from you. And then the show notes are going to have some amazing links. So, wonderful weirdos who are listening to this, check out the show notes. There's so many good stuff that we talked about, and I'm do my best to put it out there. But,
Oh,
Matthew,
awesome.
do you have any last message to the weirdos out there that are listening to us?
Yeah, man, embrace it. It's not weird, it's normal, and that's great. And I think we should all feel just the freedom to go down those paths that society would tell us are abnormal or weird. No, we should embrace it, be who we are, and see where it takes us. I think, I don't know, it's probably cliche, but there's a quote floating around. I think maybe it was Mark Twain who said it, but the two most important days of a person's life is when they are born and when they realize why they were born. And I think when you can realize who you are, why you're here, and then just pursue that, follow that, and try and make the world a better place as a result. I think humanity is set up better if we do that. And man, if that's a weird place to go, then embrace the weird, be weird, and bring positivity to the world.
Excellent words. And then be weird, and be sure you find other weirdos to be weird with you.
Yes, yeah, exactly.
Yeah. We find each other, I think.
Yeah, we gravitate. We gravitate towards each other.
Yeah, for sure. And Matthew, can you take us out saying the catchphrase of the show? Just say, keep it weird, everybody.
Yeah, hey, keep it weird, everybody.
Thank you for listening to Weird Games and Weirder People. If you'd like to keep up with the show, please subscribe to be notified when we release new episodes. If you'd like to support us, please leave a review or head on to code-fi.com/WGNWP. See you next time, and remember, weird is the new wonderful.